Welcome to globetrotter part 5. I think that's where we are anyway. Today is June 13th, 2019. And let's open things up and see where we are. I'm going to, I guess I need to open up the front end and the back end. Any questions from anyone right now?
Howard, I've missed a couple of globetrotter lectures. Can you just summarize what we're up to?
Absolutely. Absolutely, and that's the first thing I wanted to do anyway. We are building an application that we're calling like a travel planner or travel log, kind of a combination of both of those things, application, where users can sign up, sign in, and they can create trips, view trips, and trips belong to a location. We can just look at our schema and make sure I'm saying things right. If we look at our models, user is our main model. I don't know why I split that up. That didn't really make sense. There we go. We can see that a user has many trips. So we'll split that. Let's just make this big. A user has many trips. I'll split that down. We can see that a trip has many visits, attractions, and locations. So it has many visits. Visit is effectively a join model between a trip and an attraction, right? Attraction could be sort of anything along inside of a location somewhere, something you'd want to go see, such as Disneyland. So trips, visits, attraction, split down. Attractions have any comments. We haven't really touched comments yet, and it's probably something we'll get to later. I don't think we're going to put that in just yet. User, trip, visit, attraction. I don't know why I pushed up as high as I just did. That was higher than I wanted to go. I want to be able to see everything. There we go. That way we can just kind of look and see what this looks like. What a missing location. Oh, okay, it automatically did that. I didn't do that. Why do you do that to me, Adam? All right, so anyway, now we can see kind of our relationships here. And the idea is that users can, once they log in, and we added login functionality using sessions in this particular application. And I think this is where we're going to start with trips. We're going to start looking at our trips. I think that's kind of where we left off last time. So these are the models as we look at them. And oops. Okay. Let's look at our dev log, which I think lives on our back end. There it is. And so we've established our backend, at least built our initial database. We added Redux and we added login functionality. And this is kind of where we stand. We added logout functionality, which is good. We'll probably move these things around. Right now they're kind of sitting top level. We did all this. So this is some other stuff that I don't think we got to. And I left myself a note. This is great because otherwise I wouldn't remember these things. We just updated our trips index controller action so that we can get the current user's trips on load. And next up, we need to add actions, reducers, states, and props needed for all this to happen. Great. So if we look at our backend, our controllers, and our API v1 trips controller, this is what we were saying. We basically just said, let's grab our trips and render them. And on our front end, we need to sort of handle that now. And I think we said we wanted that to happen on load. Does that sound right? When our application loads up, there we go. When our application loads up, we want to check and see if anyone's logged in. If they are, we want to grab them. And either way, once someone logs in, we want to grab their trips. So that's kind of where we stand. And I think now let's check the front end. And app is currently rendering a navbar and a main container. Navbar is going to carry our links, and main container is going to be where basically where all the action happens, I think. And it's going to be like the main thing we're looking at, is what I mean. We also, by the way, could probably add some routes, and it might make sense to think about routing sooner than later. We can kind of add that whenever we want, honestly. The nice thing about routes is routing in React has to do with pointing to different components. So I can build all the components at once, show them all on the screen, and then split up the routes as I see fit. And that's kind of a nice feature of the routing is routing isn't that tough, at least in my opinion, to add in sort of after something's built out. Some things are difficult to add in later. Some things aren't so bad. I think routing's not too bad. So we're at least getting the current user, and right now no one's logged in. That's why we saw that error message. So if we log in, for example, Nadia with a password of password, well, Nadia is logged in right now, and if I refresh the page, for a brief second we see that login screen, but then when this thing comes back, we see that she is in fact logged in. That's good news. And so not only do we want to get current user, but if that current user is there, we also want to get that current user's trips. And that's kind of where we are now. So let's look at, if we look at Redux, our state currently consists of users, current user, login form. Whoops. And so now we have to think about, where do our trips go if the trips belong to the current user? Should they live on the current user object? Ooh, definitely don't want this. Okay, so let me add this to the devlog. We definitely don't want all that user information coming back. I thought we used the serializer. Let's double check. So I guess we didn't on this yet. Let me make a note in the devlog about this. This is probably something we should pay attention to sooner than later. Devlogs on the back end. Devlog. Also, so this is today, except it's the 13th, and I think we basically kind of want to, now, this is basically now this. This is basically where we are. And I'm going to move these things up because that's where we're going to start. And I'm going to big letters. Let's not get all the user info like no password digest. Okay. So let's see why is this happening? Why, when I get my current user, do I have ID, name, username? Also, password digest created and updated that in hometown ID. Why do I have so much information here? What would cause that? How can I change it?
The serializer and the relationships.
Yes, the serializer and the relationships. That's exactly right. So where did that chat? Yep, thank you. I have the chat open now. So Alex, I see that now too. I'm not sure who said it. I think it was Sim, but thank you. Yep, all correct, all correct. So let's look at what is happening in the, if I want to know exactly what's happening, if I follow sort of the breadcrumbs, I need to look at the componented mount request that's being fired, this.props.get current user. This is going to be an action coming from actions current user. And so this is get current user. So I'm fetching to get current user. Let's find out where that goes. I'm just kind of showing, in terms of debugging, if I've written so much that I forget where things are, here's what I could do to figure it out. This is just good old Rails. So where did that route come from? I can look at config routes, and it looks like I've got to get current users inside of my sessions route or controller. That makes sense. So if I hunt that down, API v1 sessions, and here's get current user. And right now I'm rendering JSON get current user. I'm using fast JSON API. Right now Rails is just saying, oh, I'm defaulting to returning this object. I know how to serialize it from a Rails object that it is into JSON. You get all the attributes, here you go. It's not what I want. I have a serializer here, user serializer. And so in order to use it, I need to be specific. It's not automatic like active model serializers might have been. So I actually need to pass this in to a new version, I need to instantiate a new user serializer object and pass in my current user. And if I save that, if I look at the serializer, I should now just have username, name, and hometown. If I go back, when this thing refreshes, I made a change to the back end, that's why I didn't update automatically. And now I see my state, my current user is much more simple. Notice that it does have a keys of data, attributes, and relationships, and that's because FastJSON API subscribes to conventions around a JSON API, JSON serving API, and that's not a bad thing at all. You just have to be aware of that and make sure you're handling your requests appropriately. I should say your responses appropriately. But this is kind of what I want to see. My attributes are username and name. My relationships, I have a hometown. Hometown just has its own data of ID and type. If I don't like this, it's like this is more than I really want, the relationship nested like that, I could adjust my serializer and just do something like this. Now the problem with that, if I save that and I refresh this again, let's see what that gives us. And now if I look at my state of current user, inside of an attribute is my hometown, but now I have, again, like back to all the Rails basics. So what I could do if I want, this is kind of like up to me how I want to set this up. I could also say def hometown and say, I forget which one it is, let's see. I forget what self is here and like how, if it's just self.object or if it's something else. Let's try it again. So we should hit our buy bug. Maybe. Did I not hit my buy bug? Am I not allowed to buy bug in my user serializer? That was weird.
Are you calling hometown?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's exactly right. So just like anywhere else in Ruby, Ruby will look locally for this thing first. So if I have it here, I should override the. So now I should be. No, I'm still not in here. Maybe it's actually not overriding. Maybe this definition is not overriding that relation or the method that we're getting. Yeah, it's not. Okay, so then I'll just call it something else. So like hometown JSON. There we go. That should do it. There we go. Now we're caught in the buy bug. Okay. Nope. Okay, wait a minute. Oh boy. Hometown JSON. No method hometown JSON. Attributes, name, hometown. So maybe it's, oh, it's attribute, I believe. So if you're defining your own, I think it just needs, oh, we're just gonna have to go look at the docs if this isn't right. Which it might be. Internal server error again. Okay, when in doubt, look at the documentation. Fast JSON. Double check. The syntax for customizing our response a bit. Rails generator. So custom attributes that must be serialized but do not exist in the model can be declared using Ruby block syntax. There you go. Attribute, and we declare the name and pass a block. And it looks like object, just plain old object, and that might be implicitly self.object is what we use. So let's fix that. Always best to look at the docs first, but I didn't anyway. So it's attribute hometown JSON, and then I pass a block. And I guess I'll probably want like this way actually. And did it have a block? Did it have a block argument? Yeah. Okay. So what it gets then? Okay, I see what's happening now. Basically, this is now the user. So it's getting the user object, and so now as the block argument, and so now I can say something like, so this is now user. Let's say like, I want this to be under hometown JSON. So I want it to be, what does a hometown have? Do we remember in our database? Schema. Hometown is a location. So it has a city, state, and country. Okay. So hometown, I want this just to be called hometown. we'll find out if it matters that that already exists or not. Attribute hometown, do user. And I want to return, just look at the example one more time, as a string. So name with year will be this string. Okay, I don't want it to be a string, I want it to be an object. So that's why I have the curlies, and I want it to say like, just for now, we'll say user.hometown.city state and country. Let's see if that does it. We'll find out. Not positive. Refresh the page. And maybe there should no longer be a buy bug. Internal server error again. Hometown. Where did I put hometown? That's not a thing. That's good news though, because that means it got at least to this line. So that's good news. Let's actually look at this thing now. Data, attributes, hometown, and now we've just got city, state, country, and that's exactly what I want. So I can, if I don't like, I can bypass or override some of these, some of the defaults if I want to around the keys, the keys under like the top level object that I'm getting. I should say the top level keys and the subsequent keys under the object that I'm getting. But at least for this API, it's always going to start with just a single object and then data. It will always start there. And right now I'm getting attributes of hometown ID and type, where hometown is an object. And that's kind of what I want. Excuse me, hometown name and username. Okay. Hopefully I wasn't more confusing than less confusing, but this is how I'm going to set up a custom attribute if I want. The other option, of course, I have is to add a hometown serializer, which honestly is probably, it makes a lot more sense. And I should be using Rails generator for that. So let's just do that. Rails G serializer, and it's just hometown. I want city, state. Maybe. Well, there we go. Took a second, but we got there. Let's double check that. Attributes city, state, country. And again, like if I use that, I'm going to get, if I go back to like relationships, for example, if I comment this out, now I'll get, if I say belongs to hometown, I think I have to specify the serializer here. Hometown serializer. If I refresh this again, we got an error. No preview response. No information at all because the server's not running. It might take some time to get your request showing exactly what you want, and then you'll get it showing exactly what you want, and you realize you actually need something else. I do recommend building a serializer pretty much around, I should say pretty much around each object that you're returning, so that you can be specific about exactly what you want to return. You can build different serializers too for the same object if you want, because remember you're going to be explicit about generating them. So let's see if that's up and running now. Let's see what we get now. We did not get an error, maybe. Data, relationships, hometown, and now because this is the new object that we're serializing, it has its own data. Apparently that didn't include its attributes. That's interesting. Data, type. So I just get an ID and a type under my nested relationships rather than any more information. So apparently I need to be more specific. And that's why I say like it's not a terrible thing if you want to just build your own custom. You can do that too. Just be consistent with what you're doing so that it makes sense and you don't get tangled up in kind of different responses and so that you know what to expect with each response. And it's kind of up to you to control your information, and you should be just sending back what we're actually going to use in each circumstance. So now I at least have an attribute of hometown with city, state, country. Maybe I don't need all this information. For now it's good. I think so anyway. So I could say something like, wait, where did Nadia go? Huh. Oh, so I changed this now, right? So it's not saying welcome Nadia. Wait a minute. Why not? Data, attributes, name Nadia. Why is that?
His name is nested now.
Data under attributes, I think that's where it was before. Or was I not? Oh, you're right. I wasn't using my serializer. Thank you. You're right. You're 100% right. So now let's go back and look at the client side. If I look at my actions, my current user, before I was getting just the user object back. And now instead of user.error, we'll have to double check this in a second. And we'll dispatch user, set current user with my user.data, right? Because that's going to be actually the current user. User.data is actually the user object. Oops. Okay, so then user.data, and now what I have to say is something like user. I'm getting now this object starting with attributes. So it's a user. What does this thing expect? My reducer. I can look at my reducer, my current user, split to the right. So when I set my current user, I'm returning action.user as the entire user object. That's actually what I probably want. So I probably can just do that. Let's just see what happens to my Redux store now when I refresh. Current user has data. I think I want the actual data to be the current user though. Isn't that what I did? Set current user with user.data. This is really now the response. I should really just say response because that's more than just the user. I thought I was doing set user response.data. This object shouldn't include the key data anymore. Why is that happening? What I'm trying to do is eliminate that key of data so that my current user is just I want my current user to kind of start with attributes. In other words, ID type attributes should all be top level, not data. I don't want data in there. How do I get rid of that? What is that response looking like in the network tab? Data. So response.data should be this object, starting with attributes, ID, and type. What's the matter here? Oh, that's login. Oh my gosh. Get current user. So let's change this to response because it's kind of more than just the user. This is just like the response object, which has a top level key of data, and that top level key of data contains my user. And now let's see what happens. Goodness gracious. Okay. And now the current user now has an ID, a type, and attributes, and that's what I want. This is looking much better. So now when I actually, and I think that makes sense for, at least for now, I'm okay with this. If I wanted to, maybe I would even just get attributes, like depending on how I wanted to use this. Maybe I don't want ID and type in here. Although eventually I would imagine that that's going to come in handy, the ID, when it comes to making requests to the backend for particular information around this particular user. So I imagine that's actually going to come in handy, and I'll probably want to keep at least this much. So in order to get the name, I have my current user dot attributes dot name. So now we're in my front end where I'm actually displaying this information, which is in navbar, components, navbar, and I'm basically saying welcome current user dot attributes dot name. And now hopefully we'll see Nadia. Here we go, and now we're back. And I can even say now Nadia from, and I can add this current user dot attributes dot hometown dot city. Now, just be careful when you have something like this, we run the risk of errors. If current users ever, if we ever get this thing rendered and current user is something like null, this could cause a problem, right? Where if we try and go this deep on something, maybe no big deal if like this is not something, but if any of this stuff is returning something that doesn't have a property, we could end up with like an undefined method error or undefined property error. All right, cool. So welcome Nadia from London. So I like that for now. We can log out and we can log back in. And it seems, I feel much better now about the information that we're getting back from the back end. So we're now getting, do I not have the ability to log in? What's going on? Am I caught in a Bible?
Maybe the changes that you made earlier in the wrong action are there.
So is there, when I click login, I'm getting.
You started changing the function, the login function.
Right, and I never got it. So I changed the wrong action is what you're saying. And that's screwing up what's happening here when I log in. So I changed this. Although in my sessions controller, for login, that's this guy. Okay, yep, thank you. So this now needs to be user serializer, .new, passing in user. There we go. And now when we go to log in, welcome Nadia from London. When we log out, we're cleared. Log in, welcome Nadia from London. When I log out, I definitely don't want this to be populated with the name and password from before. So actually when I log in, something else I want to do is definitely I want to clear that form. And so when I get success back from my submission, from my login form, which I need to find in my current user here, I need, when I log in, which is this guy, so I need to also dispatch some way of, here's what I want to do. I'm going to write the code I wish I had. Dispatch type clear or reset login form. And basically, if I look at login form, update login form returns form data. This is the only action I have. If I look at my reducer, I'll split this down so we can see it. I do have an initial state here. So if I need this, I need another case though. I need like a reset case so that I can actually fire this and explicitly return state. So I really don't even need, I really don't need anything else to come through here. I have an initial state here. So basically my case of reset login form also needs to return, actually no, it needs to return initial state. Yeah, exactly. So it also needs to return initial state. I say also as if any of the other ones did. This one will on the first time through. So in my mind, that's why I said also. But really I should just say this one explicitly needs to return initial state, which will always be a cleared out form. So now I'm going to build an action creator around this thing. And I would have to import this in order to use it in the other action. And I think that actually makes the most sense, just because that way I keep my actions according to what they actually are for. So in this case, my form data, this one is going to be called reset login form. Login form. Don't really need any data. Doesn't need to pass any data along. And I'm just going to reset my login form. Okay. I don't currently have, I'm putting this action in my login form action creators because that's what it's about. Even though it has to do with current user, I'm resetting my login form, which means I now need to import this thing into my current user actions. I'm going to import it up here, import reset login form from, we're in this, we need to move, no, we're in the same folder, and this is from login form, form.js. It's right here. and save that. And now when I go to dispatch, set current user, I'm also going to, and actually, yeah, I think I want to put this here because I don't want the state to change if there's a problem, right? Maybe they just mistyped their username and they can see that and go back and just correct it. So I like it like this, I think. So I'm going to say reset login form. Oh, I keep going too far, sorry. Reset login form. And I don't need to pass it anything. It doesn't need any information. It's just going to reset the form. So now, if I go to log out, my form's cleared. If I go to log in, as soon as I log in, it's cleared. When I log out, nothing's there. And if I type something wrong, if I add an extra F in there, and I go to log in, I get invalid credentials. My form does not clear, which allows me to see my mistake and correct it, which is nice. That's good. Okay. So that felt really good. Does anybody have questions about what I just did? Kind of like just ran through that.
Yeah, could you just go back to the code where you're calling basically the two methods, log out and the reset?
So you want to see my my action creator for log.
No, not even the action creator. I guess the button where you have on it. Yeah, what's that pairing?
You want to see the React side of this?
Yeah.
Okay. So log out lives in navbar, which it's hard to see. I'll put it over here. Navbar grabs the just props. No, wait a minute. Oh, log out. Sorry, it's its own button. Sorry, it's its own component. Log out. So this log out button is its own component, and it's importing the log out action, which has to do with current user. So it's in the current user actions file. So if we look at that current user, log out, and this is hard to see if I don't close these up. So let's do that actually, so we can see these things. There we go. Okay, so log out is a component that grabs the log out action creator, I should say, from my current user actions. That's this one right here. And when I connect, I don't need any state. I just need that particular action. That's all this button does. And so when that's passed, then so log out is passed in as props as a result of this connect. Okay, I'm using the shorthand map dispatch to props. So props.logout, I grab by destructuring the incoming argument, and that's what I'm passing as my callback to onSubmit when I click this button. The button is actually a form. Okay, so this is actually a form, even though it looks like a button, and that's what's happening. So then now when I submit this action creator gets dispatched by Redux. Because I have thunk, it actually returns a function, which starts right there. The function gets dispatched as an argument. I clear the current user to log out, and then I return a fetch request, which tells the backend, clear the session for me. Okay, that's all this thing does. Once I've done one or the other, this instead of, I'm showing one component or the other. Now this is the login form. You wanted to see log out or log in or both?
No, I got confused. You're clearing the current user and you're resetting the login form? Here I clear current user.
The login form gets cleared when I log in, not when I log out. When I log out, there is no login form. So like once I've logged in, that's when I clear the form.
Oh, I didn't.
That's already been cleared. If I look at Redux and I look for my state, my login form is now cleared out. That's when that happened. It happened, if we look at the diff, it happened, it was right now, if I look at state, login form is populated. Oops, where'd it go? There it is. And when I set that current user, immediately I reset the form as well. And I waited until I got success back from the server though, so that if there was a mistake with what I typed, I can just correct what I typed instead of having to retype the whole thing and wonder what the hell went wrong. That's when I reset the form. Logging out, the form's already been reset. Logging out's just sending a request to the backend saying, hey, clear the session. That's all logout does. And clears for the front end as well. So logging out clears the front end by clear current user, and then tells the backend to clear the session. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I was just confused. You were doing two things. Okay.
Yeah, cool. Let's get rid of that for now. Let's get rid of that for now and think about where we are now. So we've spent a little bit of time on this, but I'll say this is now done for now anyway. And this is kind of the next step. We still want to show the user's trips, the current user's trips if the current user's logged in. So that's where we are right now. So let's make that happen. And this is where things can get complicated, right? We can make it simple, we can make it complicated. How do we want to handle this? And this is where sometimes building React application, whether it's React or React and Redux, doesn't matter, connected to a Rails API starts to get like a little bit challenging. For example, when I first log in, do I want the current user to come back? Do I want this object to be nested with its trips? Do I want another key on my state, like another reducer for trips? And so that once a user's logged in, we're then dispatching to get that user's trips as well. Like which one makes more sense to us? Which one makes more sense to you? And we could do it either way. You know, it might make sense to have, what we don't want to start doing is carrying arrays of information where there's sort of the same information over and over and over again. We want to kind of handle as little data as possible. In other words, I don't want an array of all the trips and then an array of the current user's trips as separate pieces of state, because some of those all trips will be some of the user's trips, and it's like, that's not good. I don't want that. What do you all think? Would there ever be a time when we have an array of all the trips and an array of just the user's trips? You know, that's a question, right? Do we ever want to see anyone else's trips? Is that something we're going to want or not? Maybe not.
Well, it depends on who you are, right?
Well, yeah, it depends. What do we want to do with this application? Do we ever want to here's a question that's really important to ask. Like, do we ever want to be able to see someone else's trips? Or is that not something we're ever going to expose? Because if it's not, that'll make our life a little easier.
Well, I would say for like an administrator, they're going to want to see whatever they want to see.
Yeah, we don't really have roles yet, and I'm not really inclined. Roles, first of all, roles would be a great stretch goal. I'm not really inclined to introduce roles yet because that's more complexity than we need, and like each level of complexity is going to require more and more of these study group sessions to get the job done. And I don't, you know, I'd rather build a core application that works. I already have like more complexity in this than we really need, right? More than we need for the final project. So I don't want to go too much further. It's a great thought to add roles. I'm not inclined to do that just yet. Like roles could be a great stretch goal.
Well, wouldn't, you know, if you were doing roles, you don't have to necessarily do it in React. If it's an admin, they can attach to the back end however they want.
That's true, but it's still work that needs to be done, right? It's still logic to be.
Yeah. I was just pointing out it might be easier not to do the React way.
Yeah.
You're just building an admin.
Yeah. It might be work on one end, might be work on one end, might be work on both ends. But I can imagine this. Imagine I'm never going to be able to just see someone else's trips. Like I can't just see somebody else's trips as an array. So in other words, the only array of trips that I want in the front end is going to be my own, like my trips, something like that. Would that make sense? Are we okay with that or not?
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
So then, and this is where now we have some options. If that's the case, and we only ever want, so in other words, let's start, and this is the way I like to think about this is let's start with like a reducer. Let me save this, close this for now, kind of clear everything out, reset our thought process. So if I want my trips, that means I need a new reducer around my trips. Because I don't like nesting information underneath a user on the front end. I'd rather create a new reducer personally. I'm going to say my trips like this, and I'm just going to copy some other reducer because I'm lazy. This is an array. Hey, look at that. This is perfect. This is a good setup. Okay. So state is an empty array, and my default's to return state. That's good news. So this is the reducer. Let's build an action. So new action creator file called mytrips .js. And again, I could probably, what else here is an array? This one is, oh, I didn't build any actions for that yet. All right, so then I can still probably steal something from here. Probably set current user. This is probably gonna make the most sense because I'm gonna need a synchronous action. And let's start here actually. This is gonna be set my trips. Set my trips. Okay, and it's gonna be trips. Whoa, trips, don't need to shout. Okay, so now I have an action creator. And if I split down, I have a reducer. There's one more step I need to take to get this into the store. So even at least as an empty array, and I always start here. Before I think about populating this key, this piece of state with anything, I always want to get it into the store first so that I can see the name and the data type are correct. What's my final step? I've created an action creator, I've created a reducer, and actually only the reducer was required for this final step. What do I need to do?
You want to take or import your reducer to the store.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that's 100% it. In fact, I would say I did this out of order. I really should build the reducer first, then add it to the store, make sure that, because then I'll see it, then build my action creator. So this I really should have done last. So I did that out of order. I shouldn't have done that. But let's find my store.js, split down. And just exactly what Nadia said, I need to import that reducer. So let's do that. Instead of login form, this is going to be my trips. And I add that to my reducer. Using one syntax here and a different syntax there. This one's just to be verbose and demonstrative. I just want to demonstrate what's happening. It's going to be like the simpler and more common. Cool. So now I should see, if I didn't break anything, a state which includes my trips as an empty array. Brilliant. Now I can build some actions, an action creator. And now the question is, do I want to include these trips on the current user response, or do I want to make a separate fetch request once I've logged in? Any thoughts? It seems to me that there's no need for the separate fetch request. The only two times I'm hitting my get current user route, or the only two times I get that current user back, like that specific user, right now anyway, are when I log in or when I sign up. And if that's the only two times that I'm ever, and then again, like when I get current user, like when the component first mounts. If that's the case, then why not just bring the trips along with that user? I think I'm okay with that. So let's look at that. Let's see what that looks like. So now I need to go back to my serializer, globetrotter backend, look at my app serializers, and my user serializer now needs, and I either need to build another attribute, and in this case, I actually think I want to use my relationships, has many trips. And because I have many trips here, I want to say, I want to specify as my serializer. This is going to be trips serializer. Okay, very similar to the way we did hometown serializer. I need to generate them. Trips. Trip. And what do we want to include with a trip? Any thoughts? If we look at a trip on the back end, if I look at my schema, a trip includes what? I have a start date, end date, location ID, user ID. Like, how much of this information do I need? Like, what do I want to show here? Like, how much information do I want to expose on this initial load?
I would say start date, end date, and location.
Right, and this is a location which is now nested again, right? This is like seemingly getting, this could be like a bit of a rabbit hole, but it's going to be. And building out your backend serialization correctly is like the heart of building an API, a JSON serving API. And it can be really like tiresome, complicated, and frustrating. Just throwing it out there, it can be. The way I'm doing it is using FastJSON API, which is a really, really fast serializer. Like it has really great performance. You could use AMS if you really want to, although it's kind of under construction. And don't use current user if you do that. Use a different method name. You could also build your own. You could use Rails defaults. There's a lot of ways you can handle this. But yeah, I think start date, end date, location ID. Like I think we at least kind of need to know where someone went, right? At the very least. And if we want to get more information about that particular trip, maybe we have to maybe that's when we have to send another request. But I know that a trip has a start date, a location, an end date, and a location. I know it also has many attractions, right? Doesn't it? So let's at least think about location. Like that's the most simple piece of data we could return, and kind of show that first. And so let's get rid of some of this. Maybe all of it. I like to close tabs. Wait, what happened? Oh, so let's say location. Well, we can just say start date, end date, and we'll have to add the relationships manually. And now I have a trip serializer. So I could say has many locations. This is going to be another level of nesting. Let's just see what happens right now. Location, I don't have a location serializer yet, which means I need to build one. Wait, sorry, whoops, not that way. Rails G serializer, location, city, state, country. That one's easy. This is going to be location serializer. Cool. So let's just see what happens now. Did we include the has many on our users? User, whoops. Has many trips, good. Trip serializer. Start date, end date, and has many locations. Location serializer, city, state, country. Okay, let's see what happens. So now if I refresh my page, did I start my server again? No. And this is all empty. Notice that I don't get any kind of crazy, well, I did get an error connection refused, but that's not really a huge deal. I had a failed fetch request there. Type error, failed to fetch. Why did we fail to fetch? That's because no one's logged in. Okay, Nadia, password, login. Internal server error again. What happened? Uninitialized constants user serializer. Oh, did I call it trip serializer? Trip serializer, sorry about that. Okay, data, attributes, relationships is what we're looking for. Attributes, relationships is trips, which has data, and looks like it's not giving us. Does a trip have many locations? We did build that, right? Trip has many locations through attractions. And there might be like a cutoff of how deep we're going to get this information. And there's a reason for that, like as far as keeping our keys kind of top level and not getting too deep with our responses. So I have data, which are my trips. And I just have an ID and a type. Yeah, I'm not really getting these locations coming through. If I wanted to, again, I could make these more custom. So trip serializer, for example, instead of this, I could say attribute locations JSON do trip, and I want to return an object of this is locations JSON, so city, crap. So this is actually going to be a map, right? So trip dot locations dot map. We want to map over each location and return a hash of location dot city. State and country. Save that. Refresh this. And just so everyone knows, yes, this meeting will be recorded as these sessions are and posted to the student app. Just a general announcement for all to know. Okay, so now if I look at that request, get current user, data, relationships, no, I don't, trips, data. So trips is not returning. I'm not getting that information that I was looking for. Attribute, location, JSON, do trip. Should be returning what I want here is an array of locations. So I should use a do. I think that looks better actually. That might be causing an error. Ruby does not like hanging commas. Surprised I didn't get an error though. Data, relationships, trips, data. Still not getting any further. So I might have to look into why that is. Trips. I might have to end up sending an extra request for this. Yeah, not sure why I'm not getting the data I want actually at this point. So with that custom serializer, it might not let me basically, oh, no, attribute, locations JSON.
Howard, do you need trip.locations.map? I mean, don't you already have locations JSON? Isn't it already at the locations level? Basically, do you need the trip part?
So I created this as the name of what I want this attribute to be.
Right.
So when I say attribute, I'm creating a custom attribute. This is not a method on trip. I just created this out of the blue. And so when I'm iterating over though, so I'm not, sorry, this is not an iteration to be clear. Sorry, this part is not an iteration. This is a block that receives the trip object as a block argument. And so what I'm trying to return is an array of the trip's locations with just particular pieces of information as a hash around each location. I'm not 100% sure why I'm not getting that. So for example, if I go to localhost 3001/trips, that doesn't exist, /API/v1, oops, trips. Here are the two trips that exist. And if I go to my trips controller, API v1 trips, and so what I want to render is trip, oops, serializer.new, pass in trips. Let's see what happens. This actually might throw an error. It might not like that I passed in array. No, it didn't mind that. So what am I trying to serialize here? Trip serializer, and I'm trying to use, do I see locations JSON anywhere? I do. Oh yeah, there we go, okay. So this one's an empty array. This one has some information. I have to zoom out to see this, sorry. This is an array of 2 trips. Only one of, oh, okay, only one of these has a location. I wonder if that's the problem. Doesn't not, I wonder, okay, so I should, what I wonder is, did I grab Like if I drop into my console, Nadia user.first, Nadia.trips. Nadia.trips, trips.first.locations. Oops. Okay, here we go. Okay. Oh, all right. So it could just be that all along I've been getting exactly what I wanted. But if I look at the data, relationships, trips, data, if I look at the second one, no, I'm still not getting that. Second trip should have at least one location, right? So Nadia's second trip has a single location there. Which is Anaheim, California, USA. I'm not getting it correctly. So
Howard, just one quick question on that serializer.
Yep.
How, if it's the trip serializer, how does it know the locations? Is it through the has many has access to it, or?
So when I'm inside here, bug, and I am just going to refresh my server here. Should catch in my bug here. So if I look at my trip, it is my trip object. Like it's the actual object. So I have trip.locations. Oh, wait a minute, that's the first one. So if I continue, I should catch in it again for the second one. And this one should be trip.locations, which should not be empty. It should have, there's Anaheim. So each trip, this is actually the trip object, which means it has available to it all of its relationships. So the way that FastJSON serializer is allowing me to build my custom attributes, it requires a block and supplies the trip object itself to that block. And then I can grab whatever I need from it to be specific about what I want. But it's not letting me do what I want here. And I'm guessing it's because of a limitation on how deep I can nest data. And that's probably like out of the box, and I should do some more. Again, I should do some more reading. We should go to the docs here and see like exactly how deep can I make these serializations. And there's a reason that we're cutting off. We're not going to go too deep because otherwise we're going to end up with sort of this endless cycle of self-reference where if eventually when I end up with related data as a relationship, if it's got related data that's one of the top level objects, then we get this sort of, we could end up with like this never-ending nesting of information.
Howard, actually, I think I had the same problem on my last project.
Yep, you might have seen it with AMS.
And I think it had something to do with the fact that it's a has many through, and I hadn't declared the information at the through level.
Well,
so to punch through the XREF table, I needed to somehow establish that information there so that the table I wanted could grab it from the middle, which got it from the end. Does that make any sense?
It does, but what I would say to that is, in this example here, I put the bug in the serializer when we were looking the trip like square in the face, and it had the ability to grab its locations. Like here they are, and there was only one, but I should be able to do this. Like at this moment in time, the question is, do I have access to those locations? And the answer was yes. I was able to show that right here in the bug. But the FastJSON API, for whatever reason, is saying no, you're not allowed to pass that along, which is surprising to me. Actually, I thought that I could override. I thought that this would override it for me.
Well, I think it's deeper than that because I had that exact same problem in AMS.
I guess I just have to actually declare it here.
Then
no, because I'm seeing it coming back, aren't I, as a property in my response, aren't I? Didn't we see that? And we didn't. Do I have to declare it up here? I don't think so. Uh-oh, did I not exit? No, I did, okay. Did I kill my bug? I don't think I did. No, I did, okay. Relationships, trips, data. Yeah, no, it's still not showing up. Okay, so maybe the easier thing to do is just to send a new fetch request and keep from getting too deep of information. And there's like, one of the reasons this is a fast serializer is because it's not allowing me to go too deep. I'm going to say that I think that that's what's happening here. It could be something else. If I figure that out, I'll let everyone know. But for now, let's just make a new request because I don't want to mess with this anymore. And I'm totally okay. I'm okay with that. So let's just get rid of, on our trip serializer, of itself, like a trip should in fact have its locations. And I'm just going to start with it like this. I'm okay with that. And let's just make a new fetch request. So when our user comes back, that means that in our serializer, we're on the back end. Let's go first check out our API v1. And I think we did just update our trips controller. There it is. So I am actually rendering JSON of the trips being serialized. Otherwise, an error. That's what I want. This is getting the current user's trips and nothing else if logged in. And that's what I want. So let's send a request to here, actually. So once a user is known to be logged in, we have to go back to the front end, to our actions. Oops, there we go. Nope, not you. That was weird. So current user, we're gonna start here. Once a current user logs in, not only do I want to set that current user, not only do I want to reset the login form, and then again, I'm going to write the code that I wish I had. I want to dispatch a new action called get current users. How about just get my trips? Okay. That shouldn't really need, well, we could think about like what information does this need actually? And let's think about that. This is going to be, we're going to kind of put a little star here, like what do I need here? And this is going to be now to our trips actions. So split this down, split this to the right, I guess. And right now I just have set my trips, that's synchronous. So now I need an asynchronous action. So this is going to be synchronous actions. And down here, I'll put my async actions. Okay, so export const. What did I call this thing? Get my trips. Get my trips. Right now, we still haven't decided what kind of an argument we need here. And I need to then fire a fetch request, which means this is async. I'm returning dispatch, a function. And I can copy a lot of this, right? Because so not logging in, this is actually a get request. So like get current user is a get request. So I'm going to steal that. I didn't have to open up a new file, I guess. Get current user. I've already opened this much up. Yes, hopefully that's right. Okay, this is not where I'm going. I do want my credentials include. I do want my method get and my headers. That's not what I want. Okay, where am I sending this to? I'm just sending it to trips, right? Do I need to include, like, do I need to nest this under the current user? And right now, the way my controller is set up, I don't. I'm only returning the current user's trips. It's kind of a decision I guess we made last time because that's how the controller was set up. So then the response I'm getting, if there's an error, then I'm going to alert it. Otherwise, what I'm dispatching now, and this is kind of nice, I'm dispatching this guy right here, set my trips. So otherwise, I'm going to dispatch set my trips. And I have to see this response to know exactly what it is. Oops. I could console log it, or I could just look at it in the network tab, which is actually what I'm going to do. I'm going to save this, set my trips. I need to import then get my trips from this file here into this one. So import get my trips from my trips. Okay, so now I can access that action from here. I don't think it needs any arguments. And now I just need to know, like, what am I actually setting when I call set my trips? Like, what are these trips? And right now I'm just going to pass an empty array because I want to look at that response explicitly so that I know, first of all, that I'm making the request at all. And then I want to see what it's actually doing. So dispatch get my trips should have fired a fetch request. We get any errors? No. Look at Redux. Set current user was fired. Apparently we never got there. Apparently we never got here because I don't see a fetch request here. That's because I put it in login again. Dang it. It probably does belong in login actually, right? So it should be there, but I didn't put it where I was. So this is twice now I've done this. I need to learn to just keep these closed until I'm actually using them. So that's a lesson learned right there. Keep your actions closed and only open the ones that you're using when you need to use them. This one's actually forget current user because we're already logged in. And it's the same thing. I need to then get my trips. Okay, now let's see what happens. And what I'm looking for is that new request to trips. And there it is. So now I have data, trips, attributes, relationships, locations, data as an empty array. Oh, that's because that one didn't have any, right? Remember? Locations. Okay, cool. And this one actually has a location. All I'm getting is an ID and a type. Once again, seems like this could be problematic. If I really want to get these locations and their information, I might have to make another adjustment. So like, I'm not allowed to dive too deep in this. I might have to end up sending more requests than I wanted to. Because right now, all I'm getting basically is my trip IDs, effectively, right? My trip, or I should say my trip. I'm getting my trips, but I'm not getting my any more than just my location IDs, which feels annoying. Like, do I really want to actually have to send another request, or can I update? This is what this is the data around getting trips, my trips. This is just the trips index. So if I want locations, instead of relationships, I wonder if I could include them as attributes. If I go back to my location serializer, I feel like we might have played this game already. No, we didn't. Okay, location serializer. No, sorry, this needs to be trip serializer, right? But we did already make some changes. So let's save that. Does that change this request?
Howard, I think in the trip serializer, if you put an attribute of locations, just locations, you'll get everything from locations back.
Okay, we'll try that. So this is what you're talking about, like if I include locations as an attribute rather than expressing it as a relationship, right? That's what you mean?
What I would say is, yeah, just the way you did it. No, you need the has many.
This is already declared, this is already declared as in my model, which means this should still be available to me as a method. That's all it needs to be in order to work. Data attributes, and now locations is there as an empty array in the first one, as a populated array here where I actually get my information. This is what you meant, right?
Yeah, it gives you everything. You can't restrict it, which is kind of frustrating, but. And that's
what I wanted to. That's it's something I do want to avoid. You're right. Like for now, like this gives me the information I want where I want it. But I'd rather be really strict and control this. City, state, country. Honestly, like the only extra information here that's really kind of annoying to be there are the timestamps. Like I don't really need those timestamps here. They shouldn't be coming through. For now, I'm kind of okay with this. At least we have the information we want. I can kind of show these. One problem is that if a trip doesn't have any locations, which is a little weird, I guess, then there's really not much to show about it other than the date. So maybe trips should have a name. Do we agree on that? Like maybe I should name my trips when I create a trip. Hey, this was my summer 2018 trip to Puerto Rico or whatever. Do we feel like name would be a good thing to add here? Something that I can label each trip as I make one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense as an identifier of the trip, I suppose.
Yeah, so like a user can be like, oh yeah, that was my summer of 2016 trip to Disney or something like that. So I think I'd like to do that. I'm going to pause for a minute and take care of that. So I'm going to kill the server, and I'm going to make a new migration. Name, what do I add? Name to trips. Open that up in my DB migration. Add name to trips. Add column. Trips. Trips. Name. String. I think that's right. Rails DB migrate. Rails C. Let's find the first name of our first trip. It should be nil. What was that trip dot first? Let's do. Okay. It doesn't even have any locations, does it? No.
Disneyland.
I think it was the second one that was the trip to Disneyland. Second dot locations. Yeah, that was the one to Disneyland. Trip dot second dot. So that was, we'll say our June trip to Disneyland. So let's see, trip dot second dot update name June 19 trip to Disneyland. Cool. And then trip dot first dot update name. Well, I don't remember where we went because there's not much information there. All right, let's get out of here. And if we go back and we add to our trip serializer name, let's just put it as like one of the first ones. Okay, save that. Refresh. Somehow got zoomed out here. Okay, current user failed. That's because I never restarted my server. Okay, server's running. And if we refresh, server should still be, I guess, yeah, not yet. Okay, good. Now if I look at trips, if I look at my very first trip, data, 0, attributes, name. Okay, this was, I don't remember where we went. Number 2 is our trip to Disney with some locations, including a city, state, a country. So now I feel like I have some good information here on my trips that I can actually use on my front end. At least I have a name for these trips, and then I can think about like what that means. So let's get that loaded up so that we can see our trips when we and we'll add this functionality of logging in and signing up as well, which is really very little to add now that I have this action creator done. So let's think about this. Let's get rid of our let's get out of our backend for a moment, close this stuff down for now, for the time being, and go back to our front end.
So Howard, did you notice that our locations JSON started to work?
No, I didn't notice that.
When you took out that reference to the serializer, it started to work.
When I took out, what reference to a serializer did I take out?
If you pop back to the trip serializer,
App, serializers, trip serializer.
you took out has many,
Yeah,
then it worked.
that's weird.
Very
Well, I put this in. Is that still, that's still coming through too, isn't it? I'm getting both,
You're getting both.
which is kind of silly.
I wonder if you can take out locations and if you can keep the other.
Well, it would, but why? I wonder, do I have to restart my server when I change my serializers? Is that a thing?
That I'm not sure of.
Yeah, I'm not sure of either. Maybe. So yeah, now that's there. That's what I wanted it to be.
Crazy.
Which means I really should just be able to say locations. That's all I really want it to be. And if I refresh this again, Did that change? It did, right? There's no more locations JSON. Yeah. So no, I don't have to restart it. That's weird, but I'm okay with that. So it's now living as an attribute rather than a relationship. And that's breaking the rules of the JSON API conventions, but you know what? I'm okay with it for now. So it's going to be listed under an attribute rather than a location, which gives us then a city, state, and country, which is cool. So now like each attribute here has all the information I need. And now if we check out our Redux store, when I call set my trips, I still have an empty array because I never finished that functionality. So what I wanted to do in the first place was look at this thing and say, what do I actually want to set then as my trips? And it looks like under data, I have an array. And I think like, even though it's a bit complex, and I could pick this thing apart, like understand that I could take this array from the back end and I could very carefully craft exactly what I want in my Redux store. Like I don't have to just willy-nilly grab this whole thing and throw it in my store. If I don't want all this information, I can take what I need from it exactly. I'll probably for now just throw the whole thing in there and just because it's easier. And there's not really a lot of extra information. We've got a start date and an end date, and we've got locations, and I kind of, yeah, I don't really like having, yeah, that's okay, I guess. The trips can have the nested information there. I'm okay with that. So so this is going to be underneath data. So finally, we go back to our action creators, not finally, but just the next step here. My trips, what do I want to actually set here? This is going to be response.data, I believe. That should give me an array of trips. Let's see what we get. Set current user, set my trips. State, my trips is still an empty array. That's not what I wanted. Set my trips did get hit. Trips, response.data. Oh, response.data should have been, well, let's look. Trips, response, this is, the whole thing is the response to the object. .data is this array. Why didn't that work? Did I spell something wrong? Am I in the right place? I definitely hit that. I hit that. If I look at my Redux store, I can see that I hit this action, but there was no change. So what happened? And what I want to see here is an array in the console. And I see that array of objects. Okay, so is this not exactly what I'm passing to set my trips as an argument? Should be. Type set my trips. Well, Oh, do I ever update I never updated my reducer, did I? Nope. That'll do it. So switching on action type, then of course I want case of, sorry. Remember, firing an action doesn't do anything if you don't have, the reducer is where the change actually happens, right? So I have to actually fire a reducer here, action dot trips. Okay. All right, set my trips, and now I can see the diff, and I now have trips. And these trips are carrying quite a bit of information. Oops, state, trip, attributes. I only see one. What happened there? Oh, I got two involved there. Hold on a second. State. Okay, actions. Go ahead, back up. There we go, state. Okay, my trips is an empty array. Set my trips, it's an array of 2. If I look at one of these things, it's exactly what we saw there with a name. Why don't I get to see? Oh, that one doesn't have any locations. That's right. So we have to look at the second one to get locations that actually help us out. So now suppose that at the very least, let's get this thing to show us when we load up a component of some sort that shows us at least the names of the trips, which will likely be links or something that we can click on and open and get more information about. So how we do that? Right now our components are log in, log out, main container, and nav bar. It feels like main container is going to be just that, a container that's going to render some other stuff. So I think one of the things is like my trips. Right? Makes sense? Which means that I need to import it. This is going to be from /mytrips.js, which means I need to create that file. mytrips.js. And it's going to be some sort of a parent container that renders a bunch of other stuff. And I don't really have anything like that yet. So I kind of need to build this somewhat from scratch. Import React from React, const mytrips. Going to be this thing that returns something. And I'm going to export default mytrips. But that's not what I'm really going to do, is it? I want to tap in now to the Redux store. Import connect. Somebody help me out. What are my steps to tap into Redux? Step 1. Anyone?
Connect.
Yes. Grab connect from whom?
React Redux.
React Redux, that's right. Okay, and then what do I need? Right now, what I want to do explicitly is get that array of my trips from the state. So what I grabbed connect, that's step 1. What's my next step?
Connect props to state.
Map state to props, yep. So I'm going to build a function called map state to props. I don't have to spell it out. I could say mstp, right? I could say m. I could say whatever I want. But we typically call it map state to props so that anyone reading our code knows what we're doing, or at least anyone who knows about Redux. What does map state to props receive as an argument?
State.
State. Whose state? The state of this component? Or some other state? Whose state? What state is this?
Of the store.
It's the state of the store. It's this guy right here. That's exactly right. And what do I return from this particular function? What data type do I return from map state to props? Map state to props needs to return a particular data type. I'll give you choices.
Object.
An object, yes, good. I'm going to return an object whose keys are whatever I want available to me as props. I can call it, in this case, trips. I can call it my trips, whatever I want to call it. I'll just call it trips. And then it comes from the actual store, so state.mytrips. If I want, I can, and I know exactly what I want from the state, I can destructure my argument, and I can say my trips. I can even go as far as reducing the syntax down to this, if I want, which is the same as this, which is the same as this, and it's the same as this. Not to mention the same as this. Sorry, hold on. That. All the same. I'm just showing you that there's a lot of different syntaxes here that you can use that are valid. I like this one. To me, that's very nice. It's clean. It feels clean to me. If whichever way you like and makes sense to you, use that one.
Hey, Howard, I had a quick question. This is
Sure.
Babs. This is a really naive question, but when do we know we need to use map state to props versus when we don't need to use map states to props?
That's a great question and an important question. Okay. And does anyone want to answer it before I do? Is anyone willing to take a stab at answering it before I do? Okay.
Perhaps if you want it to be a controlled data.
So if I want a particular input or something to be controlled, like a controlled component, then that's a good answer, and I would say the answer is yes. But there's a more direct answer. What you just said, Sarah, is true, and would be a good answer. But again, it points to an even more direct answer, and the question is, does this component not its parents, not its children. Does this component need to know about any particular piece of my Redux store? In this case specifically, does it need to know about users, current user, login form, or my trips, or any piece thereof? Because I don't have to grab just exactly what these things are. I can manipulate inside of here, right? Suppose I only wanted, like, I don't know, some top level information about trips. I can do something like const, trip names or something like that equals my trips.map. And I could map through these things, and for every trip, just return the name. I could do that, right? And then I could say my trip names. That's what I want to call this thing, and now it's just trip names. So I'm just showing you, like, you can manipulate the state too. Do I need any piece of the state or any subset of the state? Any chunk of information from the state in this particular component? That's the question that it's either a yes or no. If it's yes, I need map state to props. If it's no, I don't. Is that helpful, clear, unclear? Questions around that? Babs, good, bad, thumbs up, thumbs down, yeah.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around it.
Okay, let me continue on, and I'm gonna stop and kind of reflect here in just a minute, okay? So I know, maybe I thought and acted before without describing what I was doing, which could be a mistake too, sorry. So I expect my trips to be a container, a functional container component, right? which you might be like, wait, what? Yep, no. And the reason I say that is my trips is going to be responsible for rendering or showing a bunch of individual trip components. And I haven't built that yet, right? So basically, like, new file, I'll call it, like, I like to call things like trip card, like whatever it is. Something, if it's a small example of what something is, I'm going to say trip card, which means I need to import that here. And this is a pretty common pattern, right? You have a parent that renders a bunch of children from, trip card. And it's not defined yet, but, so I'll comment it out for now. I'm going to have that here in just a minute. And basically, this is going to map through, and I could say const trips equals, and now I'm not here yet. I'm getting ahead of myself. So what this does, let's move forward from what this does and how I'm going to use it. Sorry, I shouldn't have done this just yet. Let's finish with my map state to props. Map state to props gives us access to pieces of the state. Whatever pieces of the state I need over here, I can now grab with map state to props. So in this case, maybe it's easier for me to start just like this. This might be helpful. I'm just going to say trips state dot my trips. This over here on this side needs to be called exactly what it is in the store. I could also destructure it and grab it directly without saying state dot if I want to. Same thing. And then on the left is what I actually want to call inside of this component. So what I'm going to do, I want it called trips, right? Why not? It's simple. But in order to finally get these trips available as props to this component, I need to use connect. Connect is a function that returns a function, a higher order function. And it takes as an argument up to 4 arguments. Really, the first 2 are the ones we worry about the most. The first one is going to be map state to props, if it's available, if it needs to be. The second one would be map dispatch to props, or the shortcutted version thereof. We're not even going to worry about the last 2 for now, because we don't need to worry about them at this moment. Like, we have other things we want to worry about. I don't need any actions right now, so I don't need map dispatch to props. And I do need map state to props, but I need to spell it right.
Sorry, Howard. Can I interrupt 1 minute? You're saying that map state to props is a function that generates a function, yeah?
Nope.
That returns a function.
I'm sorry. No, if I said that, I apologize.
Oh, maybe I didn't understand it correctly. Connect is a function that returns a function.
Yes,
right?
that is what I said.
So, yeah, that's what you said. So can you break it apart a little bit?
Sure.
So it takes as in this particular line, it takes my trips as an argument.
Now, wait a minute. Are you talking about map state to props, or are you talking about connect?
About connect.
Connect takes this function as an argument, as a callback.
Uh-huh. And this particular function is taking my trips as an argument?
No, it's taking state as an argument.
Okay. And where's my trips coming in? Oh,
So we
sorry
provide,
for a very basic question.
it's a very important question. Not a basic question, it's an important question. We provide map state to props to Redux in order to tell Redux, and we're polite, so we say, excuse me, Redux, would you please provide us access to your store, to your state, I'll say, to your state, so that we may pick and choose the pieces of state we would like available to this particular component as props. That's what map state to props does.
Okay.
So we're map state to props here. We can continue on with our little discussion here.
Yeah. I just wanted to understand the syntax. So let me know if I'm correct. Okay. So it's actually that my trip is an argument from map state to props, and whatever we get from here is an argument.
Oh my gosh, Sarah, I think I misunderstood what you said.
Why?
When you said my trips the first time, my eyeballs were looking here. Were you talking about down here?
Correct.
Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize. So maybe the answer was yes.
Good. I just wanted to make sure that the syntax makes sense.
So I'm going to show you kind of what happens. Connect map state to props takes, and we'll just say the two arguments that we're familiar with. Map state to props tells Redux, these are the pieces of state I need. Map dispatch to props says, these are the action creators I'm giving you, the functionality I need. And this thing returns a function. And we'll say like function returned from connect, from invoking connect, that now will supply my trips with props, including state as described. Maybe I should have written this as a sentence. And map state to props and actions. I'm sorry, I'm writing it this way, as described in map dispatch to props. Okay, so this is the return value, this function. It's not what it's called, by the way. Just trying to describe it. This is now a function, though. And this return, so a function, the connect function is invoked with some information. We provide it, a callback, and either another callback or an object. And it comes back, and now it's a function that's ready to take my trips as an argument. And when it's finally invoked, the return value of this whole thing is a connected my trip, component with what exactly the new props, or the additional props, I should say, that we describe in both map state to props and in map dispatch to props. And we name those props here. So if we go back to what we had, connect with map state to props, and then this thing returns a function which receives my trips, this thing up here as an argument, and it will in turn then, my trips, it will therefore, what I'm exporting is not just this measly thing here, but this bulked up version of my trips that has extra props based on what I've told Redux I need. And so now this thing is getting props from Redux, right? I didn't pass it any other props. I could, it doesn't matter. Like I could pass multiple props. I didn't pass it any other props from main container. I could if I want to. Redux will combine, like Redux plays nice. If there are other props, those will come along as well. But at least I'm now supplying it with the props that I've defined down here. And those props in this case are my trips, which means it's the array right here from state. And so now when I want to return, in this case, const, I'll say just say trip cards. And I'm just going to map through these things, props dot trips. And I have that available now because of this thing here and because I'm connecting. Props dot trips dot map. And I'm going to map through these things for each trip. I'm going to produce a trip card and pass it a trip as an argument. I should also give it a key because I'm mapping. Key.id, hopefully that exists. If it doesn't, I'll have to figure that out. And now trip card is much easier. I'm just going to steal this for a second and build this out quickly. I don't need any of this. I don't need that. This is now going to be, whoops. This is now going to be called trip card, which is just receiving a trip. No, it's just receiving just straight up. Wait, no props. No, you're right. Okay, sorry. Trip. And so then what I'm returning, let's just for now call it a p tag. Even though we'll probably change that with at least the trip.name. Okay, so now I have my trip card. I need to export it. Okay, so there's my exported trip card, a very, very simple presentational component. Possibly you couldn't have a more simple presentational component than that, which is a collection of those are being rendered here. So return trip cards. And actually, I'm not sure if I need the curlies there. I think I do actually. Is there any chance that that's going to work? No. Trip card is not defined because I didn't import it. Is there any chance that will work? Okay, we can watch these things. Objects are not found with keys trip cards. So this is, objects are not valid as React child found object with keys trip cards. What am I missing here?
Are keys defined?
This might just think it's an object. You mean this key here? Well, if I don't give it a key, let's see what it says for now. Because if I don't give it a key, it should just give me a warning. Set my trips. Okay. React, what'd you do? What did we miss? Connect, app, main container, connect, my trips. Where are my trip cards? They have empty p tags in them. Okay, so what is trip? Attributes, name. Okay, so trip.attribute.name. Trip.attribute.name. Attributes.name. Right? Oh, crap. All right, so this is where the nesting gets a little bit annoying. Can it read property of name of undefined? So if the trip is not populated, which unfortunately we have to think about that that's a possibility. I can't go that deep and automatically render this thing, which means I really just should I could either put it like a ternary here, which it's like the easy fix anyway. I could say tripcards.length. It's greater than 0. Cards. Otherwise, no. So I'm not going to render any trip cards unless that array is populated. And now we can see them. So this is sometimes like, if we're only ever going one level deep here, it would be no big deal. This would just be undefined. But since we are going more than a level deep, I have to check and make sure that they're there before I turn around and actually render these things. Map has no problem, but once I try to do something with this trip that doesn't exist, then I have a problem. And I probably have a warning here about each child should have a unique key property. And so let's look and see what that's under. Trip.attributes.id looks like. So this would be, ooh, let's see, that's annoying too, because so maybe I'm going to move this logic somewhere else. So hang on, trip, key.attributes.id. And so basically, no matter what, we're going to render trip cards. And const trip cards equals, and I'll say props.trips.length is greater than 0. If so, then this is what we're going to return. Otherwise, an empty array. Wait, why is that saying that? Oh, because it's an array? So maybe null. That makes more sense, actually. Wait, why is it still saying that? Main container line 7, blah, blah, blah. In my trips. Why is it complaining about that? I don't know where that's. This is the only place it could be coming from, isn't it? I'm giving it a key. Huh. Well, I don't see, I'm not sure why it's still warning me. I'm not too worried about a warning like this, though. I could come back and fix that later. But anyway, with a few extra minutes over our time here, we were able to at least show the trips. And this is not looking that pretty. Like I have an itch to update our CSS kind of as one of our next, sooner rather than later. So this starts to look a little nicer. But at the very least, I've got a nav bar that allows me to log in and log out. So I could be Nadia. Nadia, I think, is the only one right now in the database with trips. So it's kind of important that we use her for now. But we will, we can certainly add users and add more trips here as we get going. Right now, we can see that I don't remember where we went, and the other one's to Disneyland. So we've come a long way. We got at least accomplished loading the current user and loading that current user's trips automatically. From here, we can think about further functionality. There's a lot more that we're going to add, like the ability to sign up, for example, ability to create trips on the interface, and then of course the ability to look at and comment on attractions and locations and things like that. So, any questions about anything we talked about so far tonight?
Howard, I do have a question on the key.
Yep.
So you passed in the key, which is unique, but it didn't really go anywhere on the trip card side. Is that correct?
Well, that's more for, that's correct. It's more for Redux. Like if I look down here at app, main container, my connect trips, trip card. And the props here, you don't, like the key is is for Redux. It's not really like for us too much to worry about. Attributes. Trip.id. Trip.
Not there.
It should have been just trip.id. That should actually work. Why are we still? Yeah, I'm not sure why I'm surprised we're still getting that warning. Oh. Okay, we're not getting the warning anymore. That was probably happening when it was. That didn't make sense to me that we're getting it at all. Let me just kind of clean this up a little, make it. I think this is a little more readable, maybe. Maybe not. Yeah, so as long as our trips actually has a length greater than 0, it's not an empty array. In other words, then we're going to map through this thing. Otherwise, we're just going to put null. And now we've gotten rid of our warning I'm actually still a little surprised it was coming through in the first place, but we do get our ID top level there, so that should work fine. So and that's but the answer, I think what you're asking, like that, it's for Redux to use. It's not really so much for us to use as a prop. Like we're never going to use that. That's telling Redux so that it can keep track of its components. You could go so far if you wanted to as to use like a unique identifying package like UUID. There's a couple of generators that will do that for you. So your keys are always
there. There it is.
It is there, but you don't. Oh, it is. It's up here. Notice like it doesn't list it doesn't list under props. We just see it under here as a key. So see how it's kind of like separated by React. Yes, you see it here, but it's like React is using that sort of on its own.
That's weird, but it's interesting at the same time.
Yeah, and you could do some reading. Like you could look up like what in the world does React do with that key? And I'm sure that this will probably, if I ask the question better, and actually it does pop up as the first one, and you could do some reading on this because it actually does make some sense. React is pretty smart and it does some cool stuff to keep track of things. And the key is a way, I'm probably not going to say this quite right, but I was actually going to say something pretty close to that. Basically, a key is a way that React can make sure that it's dealing with the correct elements at any given time. It's better than just like, I don't know. I'm not sure. I can't give you an example of like where React might be confused, but I know that's kind of what it does.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
If you want, yeah. Awesome. Well, we made it this far. I know we spent some time on serialization, but it doesn't bother me at all because serialization is a really important topic and it can be a really challenging topic. You don't have to, by the way, use FastJSON API. You can use any serializer you choose or none at all and build your own custom serial. Well, you really should use serialization. I shouldn't say none at all. But you can customize your serialization to your heart's content. You can build your own serializer classes, however you want to handle that is fine. But make sure you are serializing and sending data only that you want to and from. So cool. Any questions about anything we talked about before we call close to tonight's meeting? All right, awesome. Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you for your participation and your questions. Thank you again for being here. And I look forward to seeing you all again sometime down the road. And we'll pick up building this again next week for sure. At least two days. And yeah, don't hesitate to ask any questions as you get them. I'm going to go ahead and stop this recording.